Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am Jackson, and I am joined here, as always, by the man who, much like Barry Bonds, is not in the Hall of Fame, but he should be. Kyle, how are you doing?
I don't know what Hall of Fame I'm going to, but I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Yeah, the podcasting Hall of Fame, of course.
Oh, are we at that level already?
I think so. I think it's like a Mahomes situation where, people are starting to wonder if we retire already, are we automatically in the podcasting Hall of Fame?
I guess that's fair. We've churned out a couple MVP seasons now.
Yeah, I think so. Specifically, maybe not in terms of our picks this year, though, Kyle. I think this is very much a Peyton Manning 2015 season on our resume.
No, we're struggling. We've been off. We both went 0 for 4 last week. So
yeah.
Let's hope we can get one to this week so we don't look that bad.
Yeah, our score right now, we're really racking up the points here. I'm at 70 points. You're at 61. Although the bright spot is maybe people aren't totally aware of our scoring system and might think that points are good, and then we're doing a good job.
Let's just go with that. We'll flip it around. But you got to give me more points is the thing.
Well, right. That would be the issue. Yes, points are bad. I am currently losing by 9 points. I think a very fascinating week we have ahead of ourselves. Very fascinating conference championship where I don't remember if I've ever seen this where we have two teams playing each other in the conference championship who we've seen play each other like very recently. You know, the Chiefs and the Bengals played each other week 17, and then the Niners and Rams played each other week 18. I can't remember ever seeing that.
I don't remember a situation like that ever, mainly because there was no week 18 before this. But,
right.
Just in general, playing at the end of the season, that does seem kind of rare. Obviously, I can go back to the Giants and Patriots Super Bowl in 2007 when I believe they played the last week of the season. And then they matched up again in the Super Bowl. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, two games like this with two teams matching up so recently. A lot of information from those games, too. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how these two teams match up and how it contrasts to the previous games.
Yeah. We have Daniel Snook with a super chat saying, Jackson, what to focus on your channel post Super Bowl. Once we get done with this stuff, we'll have plenty of content in terms of the free agency and the draft and all that stuff. We do not go away once the off season starts. But yeah, I think with these two games, Kyle, do you like seeing teams that have played each other before, or do you like seeing teams that haven't played each other before in the playoffs? Because I think, for me, I like seeing them play each other before, but that's partially because it just makes my job easier trying to preview them.
I find both sides kind of interesting, I guess. I find both sides interesting in that, like, I like the idea of seeing teams fresh, and I also like the idea of like having some information about both teams and how they match up with each other. So I guess it's like kind of like a preview analysis thing. It makes more sense if they played each other, but it's also just fun to watch football, so I don't really care.
Yeah, at the end of the day, there's not really many bad conference championship games unless they're blowouts. Let's get into it, and let's start off with Bengals at Chiefs. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to each give our picks for what we have to set it up. If you're new here, we're going to each put a total of 20 points on these two games. Basically, the idea is you pick a team and let's say you put 10 points on the Chiefs to win. If the Chiefs win, no points get added to your score. If the Chiefs lose, 10 points get added to your score. The goal is to have the least amount. Let's have you go, and then I'll go, and then we'll start breaking it down.
All right. Like you said, these two teams matched up week 17. The Bengals pulled out the 37-31 victory thanks to 266 yards from Jamar Chase. That being said, I looked at these two teams and I looked at some of the stuff from that game. I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs in this game. I'm going to risk 14 points. I'm going to take the Chiefs 14 points. I think that they're going to win this game. I think they're going to go to the Super Bowl. This team's look really explosive. Obviously, that Bills game was fantastic content. That was a really fun game to watch for everybody. I still can't get over that last 2 minutes of that game. But just in general, I'm looking at this team. I looked at the way they played Cincinnati the first game. They had a long stretch up until the end of that game where they kind of did whatever they want. They ran for over 6 yards per carry in that game. They threw the ball downfield effectively in that game. They scored a lot of points early, and I got the Chiefs winning this one. I think they win it pretty handedly, honestly.
Interesting. Wow. Handedly winning. Well, this should be good because I think we'll disagree then because I have Cincinnati in this one. But now I'm trying to figure out what is the optimal strategy for me in terms of this game that we play. I could just match you in terms of my official pick just to try and make sure that it all comes down to the Super Bowl. I think I'm not going to do that. I think give me 10 points on Cincinnati to win here.
All right. So let's break it down.
Mm-hmm.
I guess let's start with your side. Why do you think Cincinnati's going to win this game?
Yeah, well, let's just start with the elephant in the room, I think, is the Jamar Chase of it all and how the big day that he had the first time these two teams played each other. And I guess what really my argument comes down to and why I think I like Cincinnati in this one, and I do think it's a good matchup for the Bengals, is, Jamar Chase is basically impossible to stop. If you want to stop Jamar Chase, you pretty much can't play man coverage, or if you are, you're going to have to double him, but you still have to worry about T. Higgins, who's very good in man, and even Tyler Boyd can be effective there, although he is more effective in zone. And the reality is the Chiefs just suck at zone coverage. I mean, we saw in that game, there were several times where guys were just getting wide open in these open pockets in zone coverage. This is a team that likes to play man coverage. That's where they're best at. And so they're probably going to have to play zone coverage consistently, but I think that that's bad for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that that's going to make it more difficult. They're not good at that.
I agree. I think they're going to sprinkle in a little bit of both, honestly. I think that they saw what they did wrong in that game, and I think they're going to go back to their bread and butter. I think it's going to be I think they're going to see more man coverage than you expect. I think we're going to see a safety over top of the Chase because, a lot of it was just sideline throws, and he went up and got.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Chiefs are going to kind of alter that. They're going to try and put a safety over there to try and prevent that route specifically. Now, I'm fully prepared to admit that I think Cincinnati, these receivers and especially Chase are still capable of going off in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he's going to go for 266 again. And
Sure.
they needed almost every one of those 266 yards to win that game against Kansas City the first time. And I think that just because I kind of view a regression to the mean in that spot.
I think that's fair. I think that's reasonable. I don't totally disagree. Although I would also counter that by saying both of these offenses had great days even from their standards. So they're both probably going to, if they both have an average day, they both will regress. But I do think that's fair. I still do stand by, though. I think that it's going to be hard to stop this passing attack. It's hard to stop this passing attack regardless. And this was kind of one of those first games that Zach Taylor woke up and said, oh, we should start throwing the ball more, which is, I was starting to think about my anti-Zach Taylor take. And here's how I sort of thought about it, Kyle. People are now giving me a hard time for saying Zach Taylor was not a good coach. But here's what happened. I said the Cincinnati Bengals they're running their team completely wrong, trying to be a run-heavy team. They then started passing the ball a lot more. They've been way more successful. And now everyone is saying, wow, Jackson, you idiot for that take. Well, no, I was correct in this, right?
You were correct in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I give him credit for altering what he was doing.
Sure.
Now, should it have taken, 16 weeks for that to happen?
Right.
Probably not. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, I give him credit for that. And I give him credit because like I said, I think I brought it up on the, when we previewed the Las Vegas game, I picked Cincinnati and I brought up the point that the pass run discrepancy has gone way up in terms of passing the last few weeks for the Cincinnati Bengals, and it seemed to continue so far through the playoffs. He stayed very disciplined with it. I think the one thing is, too, both of these teams are okay at defending the run. They're kind of, mid-tier, I guess, overall. DJ Reader's
Mm-hmm.
obviously the part that, DJ Reader on his game is going to be, swallowing up any running game. But
Mm-hmm.
statistically, they're both kind of mid-tier right now. I do think there's kind of a chance that Kansas City is able to make them one-dimensional, though, in that aspect. And that might be a good thing for Cincinnati still. That might be a good thing if they're forced to just throw the ball all the time.
Yep. I don't know. I think they should be okay at running the football. Again, how often they're going to do it, I don't know. But I would disagree. I think that they could have success rushing, especially if, like you're saying, listen, if you want to play like a cover 2 man against this team, well, then, that should be a lot of success to run the football. You only have 4 guys now who can get into the play to stop the run. So schematically, I don't know how you make that work.
Well, it's going to come down to the guys in front. And then I think another thing we're going to talk about this is, if you're going to go to elephants in the room, Jamar Chase is obviously one from that matchup. The other one that's been the elephant of the room for Cincinnati through this postseason run and also wasn't very good in that game against Kansas City is this offensive line. And how's it going to hold up? Now, it may not be as devastating as it was last week, but at the same time, if your offensive line isn't on its game, and obviously I think the part Riley Reef being out has been a huge part of that too. But if the offensive line's not on its game, it's going to be a very, you can't have like third down sacks that kill drives, that kind of thing. Because Kansas
Mhm.
City is going to be able to keep going. They're going to keep getting yards. They're going to keep getting points.
Yeah. Well, again, Daniel Snook, a great point in the chat. Burrow knows if he can stay under 10 sacks, he can win. Yeah, that's the goal. Just stay under 10 and you're all right. But what's really interesting about that Titans game, though, is there were 13 pressures in that game, but there were 9 sacks. It's just like every single pressure got turned into a sack there. So, like, part of it is, I mean, that is kind of an anomaly game to happen. I mean, of course, like 9 sacks, that's always going to be a bit of an anomaly. But the other factor is you see a lot more sacks with the Cincinnati Bengals when they go up against zone, from what I've seen, and it makes sense, right? Because in zone coverage, where in man, you'll have certain routes where, like, if you throw it anywhere from second 2 to second 3, you're good and you're going to make the completion. Whereas in a lot of zone coverage plays, like, you have to throw the ball right at like 1.2 seconds. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait another 1 second for something to happen, and a sack can happen in that point. So that's another aspect, which kind of goes back to if the Chiefs are playing zone coverage, I think they're going to have a hard time slowing down Joe Burrow. I don't think they'll get as many sacks. And the Chiefs' pass rush has been very inconsistent this year. Now, I still trust it against Cincinnati's offensive line. Even a bad pass rush typically wins pretty consistently against a bad offensive line, but that's still, it's not like we're going up against the LA Rams defensive line here.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. So what do you think? Do you think, because I mean, honestly, because I was looking at these two games, I kind of view these matchups kind of similarly. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's obviously a little bit of difference in some of the rosters, but San Francisco and Cincinnati, both teams that don't blitz a lot, kind of rely on their coverage.
Mm-hmm.
And they have good defensive lines that help their coverage too. Uh, I I think they're kind of similar. The only difference is obviously Cincinnati thrives in the passing game offensively. San Francisco thrives in the running game. But anyway, back
Mm-hmm.
to this game a little bit. It's just like, so what are the aspects of, like, do you think Kansas City is going to be hyper aggressive in this game? Like I was saying, Spags has always been kind of a guy who's aggressive defensively as a play caller. Do you really think he's just going to say, okay, we'll sit in zone and hope for the best?
I think he should. I think it's a mistake if you're going to start blitzing and start leaving guys one on one. Like, even if, because the only coverage I can think of that's a man coverage play where you're going to be okay is either you disguise very well, or you have a cover 2 man. But at that point, a lot of stuff open over the middle is going to be open. We saw Jamar Chase get the route that got them into field goal range against the Titans was against cover 2 man. And so if you're going to just drop back and play cover 2, I think that's where you can have the most success. I think you will get sacks that way. You can get, the Bengals to slow down a little bit. We've seen, I think, in both of these 2 playoff games, part of why we've seen the Bengals offense not be as dominant as we saw it the few weeks leading up to the playoffs was because of a lot of, going up against the Raiders and against the Titans, 2 zone heavy teams. I think that's what he should do. And I think that if he starts blitzing and leaves Jamar Chase one-on-one, I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, so let me make the argument that they should blitz a little bit more.
Okay.
So we talked about the offensive line, but the other part of this was the Joe Burrow effect of this.
Mm-hmm.
I think One Nation Underground brought it up in the chat earlier, but I'm just going to feed off of it too because it was something you talked about after the game. He said he missed some of the protections on this. He missed some of the
Mm-hmm.
protections on the offensive line protections that led to some of those sacks, that sort of thing. So if a quarterback's admitting that in a press conference, wouldn't you have a couple disguised blitzes dialed up? Wouldn't you want to have those in your back pocket? And I mean, Spagnuolo has been that kind of guy for a long time too. He's not afraid to dial up a blitz ever. I think that'd be an interesting aspect if Joe Burrow isn't comfortable at reading the defensive lines and the blitzes right now. Is that something you want to throw at him to see what you can do?
I would say no because his numbers go way up when he's blitzed. So I would say no because I think that you can. I think he can He can still get rid of the ball quickly and still find. If he's throwing the ball up to, again, forget Jamar Chase. If he's throwing the ball up to T Higgins in one-on-one, T Higgins is winning that 90% of the time.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah. So I think it's interesting because it's the wide receivers of Cincinnati are definitely capable of winning this game. I guess the question is it going to be the same sort of output? I I don't know. I think Kansas City is going to be able to manufacture a couple stops. I think the big thing that turned around that game too for Cincinnati is the possessions got so long towards the end of that game. Like if you looked at the last game, each team got Kansas City got the ball 3 times in the second half. They punted twice and then they got the field goal, and they actually had long drives despite punting twice. So it's kind of seemed like I think if the pressure's amped up and the pace of play is amped up a little bit, I think Kansas City's going to have a lot of success in this game.
Yeah. Okay. I just don't. I think that. I mean, and we'll talk about the other side of the ball in a second. I think that Kansas City. I don't think that this is going to go too well defensively for the Chiefs. But the flip side is you have Patrick Mahomes, so that's why you still. So that's why I'm still not saying that this is going to be a blowout for Cincinnati or anything like that. Because listen, Kansas City's offense has been inconsistent this season, but not lately. It's been on fire lately.
Yeah, and this was the time they played was kind of the game that we're like, okay, this feels fully back because
Mhm.
the first half of that game they were rolling. They jumped out to a 14-0 lead. Um, they were explosive on offense. Like I said, I think they had over 6 yards per rush too. But Mahomes looked good. Their running game looked good. I mean, I feel pretty good about this Kansas City offense going against the Cincinnati defense. I know that Cincinnati has done some pretty good things defensively in the playoffs. But I think it comes down to, even though I like guys like Mike Hilton in the slot, I like guys like Awuzie. I like their safeties with Jesse Bates and Von Bell, obviously. Is it enough to stop Kansas City? I don't know.
Right. I mean, and I think to me, maybe the biggest concern I have is Cincinnati's pass rush has not graded very well, according to PFF, and the Chiefs' offensive line is very good. And this could be a game where you see Patrick Mahomes have a lot of time. And if you have the more time you have, especially in this like cover two zone that the Bengals like to play, guys could get open, and that's definitely I think a concern for Cincinnati.
Uh, yeah, I would agree because if I think that's something that we've seen he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league at extending plays anyway. If you're
Right.
not giving him any reason to extend plays and he's just going to sit there, it's going to make his life very easy. I think the Cincinnati defense has kind of been it's been a lot of Trey Hendrickson making a big play dependent to me at times on the defensive line, and I
Hmm.
just don't see that happening going up against Orlando Brown.
Yeah, and you maybe slip them to the right side, but regardless, it's still you can always if that's becoming too much of an issue, you can just start chipping him, and then there's not really too much else you can do. So I agree. I think there's a huge advantage, Chiefs offensive line versus Cincinnati defensive line. Here's something I think might be an advantage for Cincinnati. Cincinnati plays this cover two zone, which that's the coverage to play against Mahomes, right? This is what we keep saying. This is what's been giving Mahomes trouble, and he's done a better job as of late at adjusting to this kind of stuff. But that still is kind of, if you're looking at the sample size of the entire season, that's what's given him the most trouble.
Yeah, and I think the big thing too is you saw in that second half it kind of started working. Like even though they had, you just go through their drive chart real quick. It was 6 plays, 28 yards, 26 yards, excuse me. It did lead to a punt. Then 6 plays, 34 yards did lead to a punt. And then they had the 11-play drive that was over 5 minutes that led to the field goal. I mean, their game plan kind of worked in the second half as far as coverage, but it was very clear early on that it wasn't working and they weren't able to hold up, it seemed like. And it seemed like the Chiefs were able to do whatever they want. Specifically, Patrick Mahomes was doing whatever he wanted early in this game.
Yeah, well, also, I kind of feel like, yeah, a lot of people are going to bring up the only 3 points in the second half, but there were three drives, so that's a
Yeah.
little bit misleading. But yeah, a lot of what I thought worked early on though for uh, Kansas City in that game was like their initial play isn't working, and then Mahomes just like scrambling outside, and then finally Kelsey can find a soft spot in the zone and hit it, and they're getting yards that way. Where it's like, okay, that's way more sustainable for a guy like Patrick Mahomes than it is for anyone else. A typical quarterback doing that, I would say, well, that's not sustainable. But it's the Chiefs, so that's kind of why I'm hesitant to say it's not sustainable. But I guess I would say it's not as sustainable as if these play calls were just working.
Yeah. Um, I'm not worried about the Chiefs offense at all, honestly. Like I think they could go for big numbers. That's the thing too. I'm looking
Okay.
at this game where it's just like, you know, I I, I agree with you that I think Cincinnati receivers can do well, but is it going to be enough to stick? Is it going to be enough to stick with the potentially 35 to 40 points I think Kansas City can score in this game?
So why don't you think they scored that many last time? Was it just lack of possessions?
I think it had to do with lack of possessions, pace of play in the second half of this football game that kind of threw everything off. I mean, they were right there, and I mean, I'm going to bet on that they don't have three straight possessions that end up with 3 points this game. I think that they're just going to be able to move the ball. And they'll be locked in the second half, being able to move the ball offensively.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, well, here's another. Let me throw this at you. Is not only is it this cover two zone, but they're an aggressive zone defense that can create turnovers. And this is something that we have seen from Mahomes. That kind of his one weakness is he'll put the ball in harm's way at times. And quite frankly, I feel like even though the interception totals, I don't know if we'll match that up. Or I mean, both these guys have high interception totals this season. But I trust Joe Burrow to protect the football better than I trust Patrick Mahomes to protect the football in this one.
Interesting. I think
And
from
I'm
what
also
I've seen,
factoring in, I'm expecting there to be smaller windows for Mahomes to have to throw to than the windows that Burrow will have to throw to.
that I think that's fair. I think that's fair because both based on the way. I mean, the thing is too is that so they like you said they both had a lot of interceptions during the regular season. I think the one thing that stuck out to me is how little it seems like I don't even know the numbers and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I mean their turnover worthy plays in the playoffs for both of them have basically gone to zero. Like I know
Mhm.
Mahomes threw the interception in that first game, but it was deflected at the line of scrimmage. It was kind of a goofy play. But for the most part, it seems like he's been pretty flawless at it, and Burrow has obviously been very good too. Um, I don't envision a lot of either of these quarterbacks making mistakes. I'm not sure it's going to be as amazing of a spectacle as Mahomes versus Allen was last week, but I think it's going to be a pretty good duel between these two.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Listen, I'm not saying that I think Mahomes is going to struggle, right?
Yeah,
Both of these offenses are incredible. These are two high-powered offenses, and I get it. I get all the Mahomes stuff. I guess where I'm a little bit hung up on as well, and this is probably going to sound like a hot take, but I really don't think it is that Joe Burrow's been the better quarterback in 2021 than Patrick Mahomes has been.
I would agree with that, but I think Mahomes has been better in the playoffs. Um,
I guess, I mean, Mahomes, listen, Mahomes, what he did against Buffalo was incredible, but I don't know.
I mean, he had 5 touchdowns in the first game too.
Yeah, but he was playing the Steelers.
I mean, he beat the teams in front of him.
I guess so, but listen, no, Mahomes. Okay, Mahomes has been better in the playoffs, but I just my question is that two game sample size. If the Chiefs have been playing the way they played the past 2 games all year, I'm taking Chiefs all the way. But I'm kind of looking at the maybe the past 6 or 7 games, and that's why I'm picking Cincinnati.
I get it. I think that this team looks locked in, and I think I mean, they've scored 42 points in each of the last 2 weeks. And I mean, even in their final games of the regular season, they looked good for stretches in that Bronco games before kind of, getting off the gas pedal. They look good for stretches in that Bengal game. They obliterated the Steelers again. They look good against the Chargers defense. They look good against the Raiders defense. I mean, they basically torched everyone since since beginning of December. I think that they continue to do that. They looked locked in, and I don't know if there's a defense in the world right now that I think can cover them.
Again, I feel like are we buying? I mean, the issue with the Chiefs that we've talked about all year long, and it feels like everyone's forgotten about this issue, is when you don't let Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey beat them, which this defense is set up to do. Where else can they go with the football? And listen, Mecole Hardman's done some stuff. Byron Pringle's done some stuff. But as a whole, they don't have a great third option, and that might be what they have to rely on in this game. So that's kind of my main point. And you talk about a lot of these teams that they're beating. It's not a lot of teams that play the type of coverages that typically have given the Chiefs trouble that happened for the first 2/3 of this season, if not 3/4 of this season.
So I guess the roadmap for Cincinnati, you're saying, is that their receivers go nuts again. And I mean, it's basically the same roadmap as the game that happened earlier in the season, right? When they played each other.
Sure.
That, Hill and Kelsey combined are under 100 yards. And then Chase is the best player on the field, basically. And both quarterbacks are good.
Well, I mean, a little bit, yeah. I mean, it's. I think the Bengals have a better receiving core and have a more complete receiving core. And I think that it's going to be more difficult to cover those second and third options for Cincinnati than it will be, as in it'll be more difficult for Kansas City to cover the depth players that the Bengals have than it will be for the Bengals to cover the depth players that the Chiefs have, which I think this game could come down to.
Do you think that the aspect of Edwards-Helaire and Jarek McKinnon add an aspect to this Chiefs offense that's going to help. They weren't there in the last game.
Like, I mean, no. I mean, like, I'm not worried about Jerick McKinnon. Like, I just think that this is like I think we're deluding ourselves a little bit with the way, like, the Chiefs have their issues. Will those issues come back to really cost them? I don't know. Like, I'm predicting this to be a very close game. I think this is could go either way. But like, if Jerick McKinnon is how the Chiefs are going to win this football game, then okay, you win. But like, that doesn't seem too likely.
But at the same time, he's also been a huge impact to this team. I mean, he had 5 catches in the game against Buffalo. And, you talk about the third option and taking down the check down plays. That's kind of been his role. If you want Mahomes to take the easy stuff, that's where McKinnon's going to come into play, because if they're going to keep those safeties deep, he's going to have opportunities out in the flats to make plays. And there's not a lot of linebackers who can go out there and cover him.
No, for sure. McKinnon has been good. I'm just saying I'd rather have Tyler Boyd in that role than Jerick McKinnon.
Sure, but I'm still willing to convince that I think the Chiefs are going to change things up a little bit. I think they'd be crazy to go back into this game with the same exact game plan that a receiver just got 260 yards on.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, Rashad Fenton coming back from injury, he didn't play last week. I think that's going to help, because that coverage struggles when he's not out there. I got to say that. Hopefully,
Sure.
Tyrann Mathieu able to play too. I think that's gonna add a lot to this Chiefs defense too. But I think if the Chiefs find a way to get 2 stops, I think that they feel pretty good about this game, because I think that they can score a lot. So it's gonna be I think it's going to be a really interesting matchup to how these two teams go at it. I think the Chiefs make a ton of adjustments defensively, and I think that it sounds like a little thing, but I think having this full running back room with Williams seemingly coming back, with Edwards-Helaire, and with McKinnon and what he's been able to do in the passing game is going to add more to this Chiefs offense in this game.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the Chiefs are very good, right? They're the best offense in football in terms of points per drive. I feel like I'm coming off like a bit of a Chiefs hater here. I'm not. The Chiefs are amazing, and there's totally, like, just because I think it's a bad matchup for the Chiefs doesn't mean that they still won't score 35 points. Like, that's something that they can do. They have that ability to do so. But I just think that I think that unless we're just saying Mahomes is so much better than Burrow, which I don't think is totally fair to say given what Burrow has done this season, then I think that Burrow is going to be in a much better spot. And going back to that final point about the Chiefs could change stuff up, I think even if they change stuff up, the options they have to change to still aren't that great. But that's my mindset.
I think that we looked at the last quarterback matchup with Mahomes as a draw too, and we both picked Buffalo because we thought Buffalo was the better roster and the better team.
Mm-hmm.
And the quarterbacks were kind of a draw, and Mahomes still won. And
Sure.
that was I think the big thing too is yes, I think this defense is going to have, some sort of success at limiting the big plays for Kansas City. And that's what they're going to have to do to win this game, is they can't give up, 80-yard touchdown passes to Tyreek Hill as he's giving peace signs to linebackers running into the end zone.
Right.
But I'm willing to bet Kansas City and Andy Reid, who I still think designs the best offenses in football, is going to find ways to scheme Hill and Kelsey enough to make an impact in this game. Like, I just don't think that they're going to end up under 100 yards combined.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Listen, you definitely have me on the Andy Reid argument of I do think that the Chiefs have a coaching advantage. I think we can agree on that. Although I know that Zach Taylor stands in the chat maybe will still be mad at me.
They're going to come for you. And also, this is the first time we disagreed on a game in like 2 weeks. So, of course, we're going to go back and forth on it a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
No, this has been good. I think this is good content. I think if the more yelling, the better.
Oh, we're not yelling, but,
we can start
back and forth. I can start screaming. This will just turn into undisputed.
Yeah, exactly.
My turn. It's my turn. No, I'm just kidding. One more thing.
Okay.
I think, just because it's a part of the game, special teams, I think Butker's going to be better than he was last week. Butker's typically a pretty good kicker. He's a tier 1 kicker usually. I think he's better. But I think it's time to talk about this McPherson as a Justin Tucker level kicker.
Sure.
Like, the guy is straight dynamite, basically from anywhere 55 yards in. So,
yeah.
I mean, so I guess that, that's probably something towards you, is that, okay, maybe the special teams adds, a point and a half to the Cincinnati's favor, or just a point to the Cincinnati's favor, because their kicker is automatic from literally anywhere on the field.
Right. Although I did say about, the Justin Tucker comparisons with McPherson. Like, McPherson's been very impressive, but what makes Tucker so incredible is that, like, there's been like a dozen guys who have started off looking like they're going to be the next Justin Tucker and just haven't been able to do it. And Justin Tucker has just stayed that way.
Yeah, I mean, he's been good for
Hmm.
like a decade now.
Uh-huh.
So I get it, but this guy is. I mean, this has been an awesome season for him. And I
Yeah.
mean, the stuff after the game that he was like, looks like we're going to the championship game before the kick.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Hmm.
awesome. I love that mentality from a kicker.
Yeah, this is one of the more fun matchups that we've seen in AFC championship or in championship game history. I think. I mean, I guess last year the Brady Rodgers was pretty good, but this is a very fun matchup.
Yeah. I mean, this is going to be a terrific game. It was a terrific game just like 3 or 4 weeks ago. So I feel that I think it's going to be an exciting game once again.
Yeah, it should be a blast. I don't think I have. You see, this is the going off this game. This is the value of getting rid of the 2 seed, getting the bye, right? Because now both 1 seeds are out, and it's like it feels so up in the air. Imagine if the Bengals had to, the Chiefs were way more rested than the Bengals were. I feel like it would feel different.
Yeah. Well, so this is interesting because this was your point in the regular season, and I still kind of agree with it. But this is the second year in a row now, or no. So Green Bay was a 1 seed last year and made the NFC Championship game, but they didn't make the Super Bowl. So now we're going
Mm-hmm.
to have 2 straight years with this setup of no Super Bowl as a 1 seed.
Mm-hmm.
Is the 1 seed actually as valuable as we think it is?
Probably, yeah, I think so. But I think it's just the issue with the bye weeks last time was like I think about the Tennessee Titans who were able to upset the Ravens, who were the 1 seed, but you have to play the Chiefs, who are the 2 seed, who are also more well rested. So you have to pull off like 2 massive upsets. Now it's only like one team has to pull off that massive upset with the extra rest, and now you're playing the Chiefs, who don't have the extra rest. So I think that's what makes it more interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you want to add on this game?
No, I think we're good. Let's go to the other game. So Niners Rams here again. So you have 6 points to spend. Where are you putting them?
San Francisco 49ers.
All right.
I realize I'm picking the team to win 3 times in a row against the same team. Actually, it's 7 times in a row with Kyle Shanahan versus Sean McVay.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really buy into the whole San Francisco loves to throw the numbers about their history against Green Bay. Guess what? This is a different San Francisco team for 3 years ago. This is a different San Francisco team from last year. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the San Francisco team is going to have success again against this Los Angeles Rams team. It's a battle of defensive lines, and I trust San Francisco still to scheme things up to make plays against this Rams defensive line and this Rams defense. And kind of similar to what I was saying, 49ers don't blitz. 49ers, stay in coverage. They let that defensive line do its thing to get after the quarterback. That's what you need to do against Matthew Stafford. I got the 49ers winning this game.
Yeah, this is a bit unfortunate because I also had the 49ers winning this one, which
right.
is, pretty, I feel pretty interesting here. I mean, what I just keep going back to, it's like there's a reason why the 49ers beat the Rams twice this season, and have beaten the Rams the past 6 times. This is the tough matchup for the Rams, and starting off with the the Rams offense, I just think about like the first stat that jumps out at you. The Rams are the best, Matt Stafford, best quarterback in football against the blitz. The 49ers blitz 3rd least in football. Like that's just, or 4th least in football. Like that just jumps out at you right away.
Yeah, and the thing is I keep saying, because I think I've said it on like the last 2 weeks, like when I've picked against the 49ers, even though I like them in the regular season. I think
Mm-hmm.
I've said the last 2 weeks that I'm like, I don't think the 49ers really cover all that well. But at the same time, their coverage numbers are decent. Like they're okay against the coverage overall because they have so many guys in coverage. Like you said, this defensive line makes it very easy for this coverage to succeed because they get after the quarterback quickly, and they also, they can keep a lot of guys back there. They can get away with rushing 4, and I think that's going to have success in this game.
Yeah, and another thing that jumps out at you is the 49ers play a lot of zone coverage. Cooper Cup, his yards per route ran when he's playing going against zone, 2.76, which is a very high number. That's a very good number, 2.76 yards per route ran. When he goes against man, it's 4.64, which is like an absurdly high number. So you're not just making it more difficult on Matthew Stafford, you're also kind of taking away one of their biggest strengths where you can't man up against Cooper Kupp. Well, they're not going to try to. So that's another point in the matchup favor for San Francisco.
Yeah, so basically it makes him human. And then I guess the one thing for the Rams, the way they're going to have success in this passing game is the secondary guys are going to have to come up big in this one, right? Like, because I think there's going to be a lot of attention on Cooper Kupp and what he's doing against his own defense basically at all times. So it's going to come to they're going to have to set up some zone busting plays for guys like Tyler Higbee. They're going to have to set up some plays for Odell Beckham getting open in the middle of the field. And are those guys going to be able to consistently do it against this defense? I don't know if I really believe it.
Right. I think I think all of that is very good. I had a point to attach to it, and now I'm trying to find it. But yeah, I think I agree. I think that you're going to have to do this. And you're going to probably scheme some stuff up. Use these zone busters that Sean McVay likes to do. But again, you can only scheme stuff open for so long. And the flip side is like, and we'll see this with both these two teams. Is both these two teams are aware of what you're going to try to do when you scheme stuff up, and they can counter it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's still good defensive players on this 49ers team. Fred Warner's going to be in the middle of that field making some plays too. I think here's the thing I'm worried about too with the Rams. Although this Stafford era of Los Angeles likes to throw the ball, they're more comfortable throwing the ball than what we've seen in McVay offenses in the past. There's a total chance that 49ers just make this team totally one-dimensional, right? And just eliminate the rushing game completely. And while I think the Rams would be more okay with that, with Stafford obviously, than Goff, that's not a hot take. Is that what they're going to want to do in this game? I'm not sure if that's necessarily the case, but I think the 49ers just have a chance to completely take away the Rams' run defense.
Yeah, run offense, I believe.
Run offense, yeah. Sorry, yes.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, listen, we saw last week the Rams. I mean, that's part of what allowed Tampa to get back into the game was the Rams just couldn't run out the clock. Like every time they ran the ball, they're not gaining any yards, and that does make things a little bit more difficult. Also, fumbling 4 times that makes it a little more difficult too. Maybe don't do that this time. That's my advice for them. But the Niners stopped the run very well. They have a really good defensive line. We talked about Fred Warner, who is a star in this league. But another interesting thing is, this Rams, part of what we talk about the Niners is their incredible pass rush. But the Rams pass block really well. And so kind of like how I talked about earlier about how when you have a bad pass rush versus a bad offensive line, that's usually advantage pass rush. When you have a good pass rush and a good offensive line, that's usually advantage offensive line here. So that's maybe the one thing the Rams could have is they could have time in this one.
They could. I was trying to see what were the numbers in the 2 games they played. Let me take a look at this. So, I mean, they did pretty good in that game too with pass coverage, it seemed like. So, I mean, there's definitely potential for it, but at the same time, like the second game, obviously they got 5 sacks on Stafford. But I mean, like, even if they like what is determined as success, like I still think Bosa is going to have a huge impact in this game.
Sure.
I still think Eric Armstead's going to make some plays in this game. So even if it's a good offensive line performance or a great offensive line performance, I don't think they totally negate this defensive line.
Yeah, I agree. But also, this is like one of the biggest strengths of this team. It might not be as big of a strength as they're typically used to.
Yeah. So, and how much does that affect the passing offense if Matt Stafford has, a half second less to throw the ball, even if or a split second less to throw the ball than he's used to, because it's just, even though it's still a good pass protection, it's not as good.
Yeah. Worth noting with Matt Stafford, I think we got to talk about this aspect as well. He's thrown 4 interceptions combined the last time these two teams, in the 2 previous matchups against the 49ers. He's put the ball in harm's way. One of those was like a screen pass that got dropped and went right into Jimmy Ward's hands, who caught it and ran it for a touchdown. So that one's a bit like fluky. But, he is someone who is known to miss a throw on occasion. And if you miss a throw against a team like the 49ers who have, typically 7 guys looking at the quarterback, well, then someone could intercept it a lot more likely than if you're playing man. The other aspect is he's someone who will take some chances and try to fit the ball through tight windows, which doesn't always work out. And we'll talk about Jimmy G and how that's also an X factor with him, but that is an X factor here. Even in the Buccaneers game, he had one throw that could have been intercepted, wasn't, and then has been great outside of that for this postseason. But again, ignoring just the 2-game sample size and looking at the larger sample size of Matt Stafford's career, that is something he will do.
Yeah. So I think you said they're third least in the NFL as far as blitz rate. I think I was looking at it, they're at like 19% for the season. In this game, do you think it's going to be like 5%?
Interesting. Probably, yeah. If it was me, I would say yes.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very low. I don't
Mhm.
think they're going to, I think like you said, they're going to invite Stafford to try and throw those through those tight windows and
Mhm.
hope for a couple of mistakes. Now, Stafford's been great, obviously, in the postseason. I don't think he's really gone up with the defense of this mindset. Obviously, we could talk about, Tampa Bay doing the exact opposite at the end of the game, throwing everybody at him. Didn't work out. But this is a team that I think is going to invite that opportunity and hope he makes the mistakes and wrong reads, which he hasn't seen yet in the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's very fascinating with Stafford of it all. I mean, what a cool, I would think of all these teams like this is kind of irrelevant, but I just something I thought of. Wouldn't like I would be very happy for whichever team wins the Super Bowl this year. Like, usually that doesn't come into the case. Like, I think some people probably are not big fans of Kansas City, but like, I don't know. I think like it'd be a cool story, like getting blown out the way they did last year, but coming back and winning it the following year. And then the other three, it's like these are teams that haven't won it in a while or at all. Great young quarterbacks and all that stuff. These 4 very likable teams, I think.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I enjoy watching Kansas City play football.
Hmm.
I think there's some cool storylines here. That being said, it's going to end up with Kansas City winning the Super Bowl, and we'll see like Jackson Mahomes on stage celebrating a Lombardi trophy or something like that, and everyone's
Sure.
going to be all upset.
Yeah, probably, yeah. But anyways, let's go to the other side of the ball here. And I think the first thing that, like, listen, Rams fans are probably screaming at us to point out, and this is the fair thing. It's like the Shanahan run scheme is like what this whole team is built around, running the football. And the first 2 times these 2 teams played each other, they ran the ball a lot, way more than they typically do. So the Rams' run defense is great, and you're going to have to run the ball against guys like Aaron Donald and Von Miller. The Rams did an okay job the first 2 times, but the 49ers got theirs as well. But also, I do think the more times you see a Shanahan run scheme, the more you'll have success with them.
That's fair, but at the same time, it's kind of like, so what is exactly a successful game for Los Angeles? Like, I don't see a scenario where they're like keeping the Rams. They're keeping the 49ers offensive production under 100 yards rushing. Like, I still, like you said, I think they're going to get theirs. And I think the big thing too is that, like, I think what's so fascinating about this 49ers team is it's a really good offensive line too. Obviously, I don't think it's the same level as Los Angeles offensive line, but it's a good run blocking offensive line. And then like they could go up against a really good defensive line like this one, like you were saying, and they'll just throw like Kittle and Juszczyk on the field and just
Hmm.
have like 7 blockers on the field at all times. And
Right.
it won't phase their offense at all. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. I think we're going to see a lot of extra blockers on the field. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Kittle kind of has like just an okay game in this one because he's blocking so much. And I think that's
Hmm.
going to change a lot of what they do.
Yeah. Here's why I like San Francisco to win, and I'm imagining this is part of what you like as well. Is this Rams defense is built to take away deep shots. They're built to not let you get the ball down the field. Have to work methodically down the field, which is exactly how San Francisco is built. It's like San Francisco was created to beat the Rams defense. It's like a puzzle piece fitting perfectly, and I think that's kind of fascinating. And typically I'm always kind of the mindset of I like teams that can push the ball down the field, but no one can push the ball down the field against the Rams. But at least San Francisco can methodically move down the field.
Yeah, and I think, I said Andy Reid's the best in football at scheming guys open. Kyle Shanahan might be number 2,
Right. Hmm.
or it might be 1B, honestly, in that regard. He's going to
Hmm.
find ways to get Ayuk into space. He's going to find ways to get Samuel into space, whether it's in the backfield, in the slot, out wide. I think one of the interesting thing about this, so I looked at I was like, I'd really love to see how like the Rams would approach, like, because I was thinking about Jalen Ramsey and how, he's an amazing cornerback, all that kind of stuff. We all know that. Maybe one of the
Hmm.
best in the league. or maybe the best in the league, is one of the best in the league.
Mm-hmm.
In college, it was so interesting to watch Jalen Ramsey in college because he would do different things. He would line up outside, he would line up in the slot, he would line up in like a free safety role, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, wouldn't it be really interesting to see the Rams do that again and just have like Jalen Ramsey line up all over the field to try and negate Debo in some way? And then I
Oh
look
yeah.
back at it, they did that. They did
Mm-hmm.
that the first time they matched up, and everybody else got torched except for Jalen Ramsey. They actually
Right.
did a pretty good job against the run when he was lined up in the slot, but
Mm-hmm.
every other cornerback on the field basically got killed in that game, and it didn't work, and it was a disaster, and they gave up 31 points in that one. So I was like, okay, so maybe they shouldn't do that, but I still kind of feel like that could be an interesting thing if they go back to it.
Yeah, I think so as well. Well, and that's kind of the other. I think the other thing about this, what's fascinating about the first two times these two teams played each other, is the Rams like to play zone. They don't only do that. They're not like one of these teams that they're not the Seahawks, right? They mix it up a lot, but that's what they like to do. And the 49ers crush zone coverage. So, but when they played man, which they did a decent amount in that game, they didn't really have success there either. San Francisco was able. It was like Brandon Ayuk was really able to have get open. Debo was able to get open. It's kind of like whoever, kind of like you said, whoever Jalen Ramsey isn't covering, you throw to that guy. Like you still have to man up against George Kittle then. So, this and even Jawan Jennings had a big day the second time these two teams played each other. Like this 49ers receiving core is very underrated. I mean, this is a really good receiving core. They have a lot of successful parts here. Kind of amazing to think about how Brandon Ayuk was in the doghouse early on because he's been a huge piece down the stretch. So if the Rams are like, I kind of think for the Rams, you got to just play your zone and just say, like, listen, this is what you're good at. Just do that and know this concept that Shanahan's going to throw at you and try to stop them.
Yeah, and I mean the big thing is going to be like if they're going to have success, like obviously I think they're going to run zone defense like you said, and I think they should too. The big thing is that they can't let guys like Debo, like the yards after catch thing is huge with him, right? He's one of the best in the league at it.
Mm-hmm.
They can't let him get 20 yards of reception because he's getting 10 yards per catch, yards after the catch, that kind of thing. They got to
Mm-hmm.
basically stay in front of him, identify him on the field, tackle him. And I just don't know if they're going to be able to do that. Like you said, like I like Darius Williams as a player. I think he's a pretty good cornerback, but this doesn't seem to be the matchup for him. And I wonder if there's just too much speed on the San Francisco side.
Yeah, exactly. And they put you in tough positions. Shanahan's he has a bag of tricks he's going to throw at you. The Rams do, we've touched on this. The Rams do have, their pass rush is going to affect you. It affects everybody. The Von Miller addition was a great one for them. But the 49ers do pass protect pretty well. And like you said, they can bring in extra blockers if they have to. So there will be moments when we see it happen. And, that could be a very real thing. But it's not like a complete win the way it kind of was last week for the Rams against Tampa Bay, who, when healthy, has a good offensive line, but they had some injuries. And also the Rams just were able to beat even some of their healthy guys.
Yeah, and I think the big thing too when you talk about the Rams pass rush obviously is very good, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, I think if you ask any defensive lineman, a team that runs the ball as much and as differently as the 49ers do, it
Mm-hmm.
makes it that much harder to rush the pass because obviously, you try and, pass rushing is as much about skill as it is timing and trying to
Mm-hmm.
time up the ball, trying to time up when he's dropping back and getting to him. It's a lot harder to do that when they're running the ball all the time and you can't time those dropbacks.
Yeah. So we've gotten to about 50 minutes into this podcast without talking about Jimmy Garoppolo, which is probably why our arguments are sounding a lot more strong now than they might be after we get to him, because this is the X factor, I think, for the Rams and for the way that they can win this game is you have an advantage at quarterback. And again, how much of an advantage, maybe we can get into that, but you have an advantage. Garoppolo, who I think has had a pretty good season as a whole, has not played well these past several weeks, specifically in the playoffs. So maybe you hope that he reverts to the mean and kind of has an okay day. But the X factor is Garoppolo makes a couple of horrific mistakes, and that cost the 49ers the victory.
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting to see, like, we talked about, I think the thing is that, like, don't you feel like it's going to be a little bit easier if they do just drop back into zone coverage for Garoppolo? Like, yes, you have to throw into more defensive players, but at the same time, like, Kyle Shanahan's offense is not going to make him like make difficult throws. Like
Mhm.
they're going to try. Like I feel like it's almost the opposite for the Rams, where if you're going to frustrate Garoppolo and force him into mistakes, it's coming by bringing pressure at him and getting after him. I think he's I think he's pretty good against, just a common rush.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like Jimmy Garoppolo is like a dog, right? It's like
Yeah.
like the dog knows its specific tricks, but then all of a sudden, like if a squirrel comes across, then like it like freaks out and panics. It's like that's what you just need to avoid any squirrels happening.
Yeah. Could we see some Trey Lance snaps?
We should, right? I mean, like, why wouldn't we see a 5 plays of Trey Lance in this one? Like that, I don't get why they went away from that. They were doing it earlier on in the season. I have to imagine Kyle Shanahan expected that to be a part of the offense. I don't get why they've completely gone away from that.
Maybe he's keeping it in his pocket for this game. You never know.
That'd be kind of a bold move when you were, had a 4th down and 1 deep in Green Bay territory, down 7 in a divisional round. Maybe you had the perfect, you know, block punt play set up. I don't know.
Sure, I think so, but at the same time, like, even if Trey's out there, I'm like, okay, you should probably still put the ball in Debo's hands.
Mhm.
I'd
Sure,
still trust Debo to make that play more than Trey Lance. I mean, it'll be
but
interesting.
you get an extra blocker that way. At least you
Yeah,
can use him as, a fake.
yeah, and I think the big thing is too is so we've talked about this Rams defense and their coverage. They cover downfield very well, like you said. But like, are they just leaving themselves open for like a Kittle, 8 catch, 90-yard game, and like my guy, fullbacks forever, Juszczyk out of the backfield, just slipping out in pass block situations, just slipping out for like 4 or 5 huge catches in this game. Maybe not 4 or 5, but like 3 huge third down conversions for the Juice just out of the backfield in this situation.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't put as much thought into how big of an impact Kyle Juszczyk will be having in this one. Maybe just the Kyles together is what's really making you pay too much attention to him. But I mean,
I'm
like
always
yeah,
thinking about the Juice.
sure. Who isn't? Who isn't? I mean, that's why I have the Rams losing to the 49ers in this one. And that's why I think the Rams have lost the 49ers twice, is that the 49ers have, whether it's throwing to George Kittle or whether it's, just running the ball with enough effectiveness to consistently move down the field, or these wide receiver screens that can be effective against the Rams. And now you're putting it in Deebo Samuel's hands. Like, it's all this stuff that they've had success with. I'm going with the data, and the data has suggested that the Kyle Shanahan scheme has beaten whatever McVay's defensive coordinator has thrown at them for the past 6 times, and that's why I'm willing to say it's probably going to be a 7th. Like, people love to say it's hard to beat a team for the 3rd time. Well, it's a lot easier when you beat them the first 2 times, because you have about a 65% chance the 3rd time is what history tells us. So I don't think it's a blowout. I think that the Rams can absolutely find a way to pull this one out, but I have the 49ers winning this one.
Okay. So is there anything else you want to add about this game? We're
Not
just
in
under an
particular.
hour. Okay.
Mhm.
So let's go into one more. I'm throwing this on you on the spot.
Okay.
One bold prediction for each game. Can you give me one for each?
One for each game. Oh, actually, I had one more thing, but we can talk about it at the end. So, one bold prediction. Okay. I like this. One bold prediction. Do you have any? Do you want to go first and then let me go?
All right. Let's see. I think Stafford turns the ball over 2 times or more.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's bold, but it's bold enough for
Mhm.
me. He's
Okay.
played well this postseason, so that
Mhm.
would be, against the norm for him. And I mentioned in the thing, Jerick McKinnon over 80 yards receiving in this game. Jerick McKinnon has over 80 yards receiving out of the backfield.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, I'll go a little bit bolder because that's the whole point of this. I'll say Mahomes turns the ball over multiple times. All right. That's my bold prediction for that game. And for the 49ers, I will say they win this game with Jimmy Garoppolo throwing I'll say less than 20 times.
Is that bold or is that
Okay.
expected?
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. Less than 15 times.
Okay. Interesting. All
Mhm.
right. Well, we'll see if those pay out.
Mhm.
So we're each locked in step with the 49ers Rams. And then obviously the big sway for our scoreboard is going to be the winner
Mhm.
of the Bengals.
Yeah, so if the Bengals win, this means that you're adding 14 to your score. So if the Bengals and 49ers win, this means that I will have either way. If the Bengals win, 49ers game doesn't really matter that much because there is a significant. It'll matter if the Chiefs win, but the Bengals win, then I will be up, meaning I would get to pick whoever wins the Super Bowl. Whereas if not, you will get to pick who you think is going to win the Super Bowl and have a sizable lead there.
Yep. So, all right. Well, what else do we want to talk about with these games? Go for it.
Yeah, sure. One more thing I was going to say is this is just a thought I had. Obviously, there's no way we could have known what would happen now, what would end up happening that we would, that we thought was going to happen in the draft. But the 49ers traded 3 first-round picks to draft a player who is probably not going to get any snaps in this football game. You have to think they would have a much higher chance of winning this football game if they had Jamar Chase or if they even stayed put and got like Micah Parsons, who was drafted with the pick that they eventually traded. That's just a thought I had. I'm not saying that it's total hindsight is 2020 move, but that is an interesting thought experiment.
I mean, hell, if they had Kyle Pitts, that would be even better, there, it is interesting. Now here's the thing though. So they're at this point now. If San Francisco wins the Super Bowl and can basically just roll after a Super Bowl into the Trey Lance era. Now, I don't know, I mentioned this in the regular season. People thought I was insane. If they win the Super Bowl, does Jimmy Garoppolo have a job in San Francisco next year? He kind of has to, right?
I don't think he has to. I think you could if Jimmy Garoppolo plays the way he's played these past 2 games in the next 2 games, but you win both of those games, I don't think you have to say, well, since he was the quarterback for our Super Bowl winning team, you can totally just say well, he didn't play particularly well. So we're not going to, I think he probably at least keep him on the roster if he does that. But, the Ravens got rid of Trent Dilfer after they won the Super Bowl. Now, I think it's a little bit different, but it's not wildly different.
Right. So yeah, I mean, but if they manage to win the Super Bowl and go into the Trey Lance era next year, is John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan then a genius?
Right. Yeah. What do you do about? I mean, it's very fascinating. It sort of reminds you of when Nick Foles won a Super Bowl with the Eagles. It's now what do you do? Do you go with Nick Foles? Do you go with Carson Wentz? It's a similar situation, although very different.
Yeah. So I think it's a fascinating conversation though, because I mean, could you imagine a team with Deebo Samuel, Jamar Chase, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle as your pass catcher? Who defends that? Who could defend that?
Right. Exactly. It's just it's just a fascinating situation. I think where and again, the reality is if they didn't go quarterback, I doubt they would have made that trade to go up to number 3 anyways. So it's kind of a useless point. But they could have had a Devonta Smith who was only selected a couple spots ahead, or again Micah Parsons was drafted the spot they used. So there's things they could have done.
Yeah, or they could have gone Panthers and picked a cornerback that got hurt. But either way. So yeah, I mean, it is an interesting conversation point though that they could have drafted the quarterback's replacement who might win a Super Bowl this year. What's if you had to pick a matchup, not we don't really have biases with any of these teams. At least I don't.
Well, we'll get accused of having biases of both the teams that we picked against in the chat, in the comments below, I'm sure.
If you had to pick a matchup, what would be your dream matchup? Is it Chiefs Rams just for best game?
Yeah, I think Chiefs Rams. I think Chiefs Rams is the best game. I mean, Bengals Rams would be very good as well. I think both of those 2 teams are fascinating, but I think that Chiefs Rams is. I think the Chiefs. It's weird because I actually think I'm picking the 2 teams I don't believe are the better team in this one. I think I believe that pound for pound, the Chiefs are better and the Rams are better, but I just don't like either of the matchups.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I picked. I told you. I think I said in the regular season is Cincinnati a sleeper. And I think we both kind of came to the agreement that it feels a year away still. So do you just love this matchup for them then?
Yeah, it's a matchup thing. I mean, listen, Bengals fans have been crushing me all postseason for consistently picking against them by 1 point. They should probably be mad at me now because now I'm picking them to win. They'll probably lose, right? That's how it'll probably go, especially if this is the biggest pick of the season for us. But, I like I like the matchup, and and I kind of stepped back and said for a second, like, listen, this team is exactly what I like about a football team. A team that covers well, a team that receives well, and a team that throws the football well. Like they check all the boxes that you want to have, and I'd like their offensive line to be a little better, but they're great. And Joe Burrow's a star. I mean, Joe Burrow's going to win a Super Bowl one day. It might not be this year, but it might be this year. He's that good.
A Super Bowl and an MVP.
Yeah.
He could be. So it's interesting. He could be one of the. I think Marcus Allen's actually off the top of my head. So I was thinking about this. Marcus Allen would be the only only player in football history to win a Heisman, a national championship, an MVP, a Super Bowl MVP, and a Super Bowl.
Interesting. So Burrow could do
Joe
that.
Burrow, if his career goes out as we hope, he would be the second to do that because there's guys who've been close. I think OJ had everything except for the Super Bowl too. I think Cam Newton had everything but the Super Bowl stuff. So, that'd be an interesting one too.
Yeah, that is fascinating. Yeah, I mean, again, crazy stuff. The Bengals are in good hands here. Maybe get some protection for him, but it should be a very fascinating week. And I'll say this: I don't know if there's a bad matchup here. It would be kind of funny if the Chiefs and Niners play each other again too, though. That'd be fun.
It'd be interesting to see the rematch and what they do differently. I don't know. I mean, that game was everyone. I think people forget that game. 49ers were really close.
That was a great game. I mean, if Jimmy Garoppolo can make a throw in that fourth quarter, they win the game.
Yeah, I mean, he was a half a yard away from hitting Emmanuel Sanders for a game-winning touchdown.
Yeah, and everyone brings up that one. There was a couple of missed throws early on when they were trying to run out the clock too, and those were almost even more damaging because if he hits Emmanuel Sanders, there's still a minute left for Mahomes. He only needs 13 seconds, but when they're trying to kill the clock, those ones were even more damaging, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Also, fun fact: I'm pretty sure Jimmy Garoppolo Jimmy Garoppolo was going to win Super Bowl MVP if he makes those couple of throws. There wasn't really a standout, and he was I think it was 19 for 21 in the first three quarters. There's a world where Jimmy Garoppolo is a Super Bowl MVP. It's just not this one.
Yeah, didn't Debo have an awesome game that one?
Probably.
I feel like I remember that. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I can't remember that much, but I do remember that game was closer than people think.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. So those are our picks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. That's our show. Fun stuff, Kyle. Next time we will be talking, we will know who's going to play for the Lombardi Trophy. Yes.
Looking forward to it. Should be some good games Sunday afternoon into night. And I don't know. I think it's going to be really interesting. I think these are two interesting clashes in styles. I think both of these games could be really exciting. I think all 4 teams can put up some points.
Yeah. Who do you think is going to get more criticism in the comments below about the Bengals Chiefs, back and forth we had? You think me or you?
I think there's a bigger Bengals contingent in your chat.
Yeah,
on your page. I think you have a pretty good Bengals following, which, we're all for any fans, but yeah, it seems like you have a pretty good Bengals following. So probably me.
Yeah, which is weird because I've done nothing but criticize them for my entire YouTube career.
Well, I think Bengals fans have done nothing but criticize their team for their entire lives up until this year. So I guess that adds to it.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Yeah. So I'll be making videos during those conference championship games. No live stream, I don't think. But I'll make the videos and stuff, and we'll be live after the fact. Do you want to move it up an hour and do 11, or do you want to keep it at midnight?
It's a 6 o'clock start, right?
6 or 6:30. I can double check.
Because I feel like we got stuck in that we were waiting for it. We can do 11 if you want to do 11.
Okay.
Do you want more time for videos? It's up to you.
I think 11 should be fine because I think it's 6:30. So I'm just trying to think if it's a 3.5 hour, and that should give us 10. It should still give me an hour. So I think that should be fine. So we'll move it up an hour. Next week we will be at 11. Previewing, talking about the two teams that will be going to the Super Bowl. Of course, if you're an audio-only listener, or someone who prefers to listen to podcasts on audio only, we do have the audio only versions of the podcast. Anywhere you get your podcast should be available. Kyle, the audio only has been going up. People have been listening to the podcast on audio only. Maybe they still want to see our ugly faces anymore.
Podcast of the year, baby. Hey, if you're on audio only, go to Apple Podcasts, look up On the Sideline Podcast, give it a rate, give it a 5-star rating because we're awesome, and give it a nice review because be nice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right. On the sideline is how you will find it. Kyle, let them know where you can find us on Twitter before we head out.
Yeah, and I'm just kidding, by the way. If you hate us, you can give us a bad review.
Yeah,
It's okay.
whatever your review is, it's fine.
Yeah, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Any publicity is good publicity. Am I right? Anyway, so make sure to follow us on Twitter. That is at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Gronin, and make sure to follow the account page at On the Sideline JK. That's at On the Sideline JK.
Yeah. Again, thanks to everybody. We do appreciate it watching. Someone asked, are you doing any film breakdowns? Yeah, I'll have the film breakdowns on Sunday. All those videos will be available. Podcast on 11. Kyle, any final thoughts before we head out?
Do you want to say anything to your offensive coordinator, Byron Leftwich, even though it's official but not official?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a weird situation. It feels like a lot of people are saying like, no, this has happened, but like they're still like interviewing people. So like, I feel like that's typically not what you do, right?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Did they already have the interviews lined up? And like, this would be awkward if we like turn it down. So let's just go through the interview. We've already done this. Let's just make it happen.
I imagine that's kind of what happened. I would be shocked if it's not Leftwich at this point. I feel like that'd be a bad look to be like, oh, just kidding. To your former franchise quarterback.
But did they? Well, first off, not really franchise quarterback. I mean, with all due respect to the great Byron Leftwich, I don't know if that might be a bit.
They drafted him in the first round.
Grade. Sure, they're the expected franchise quarterback. But I think that I guess where I would say is, I don't know if they've came out and said like we're going to hire you, or if that's just like what people in the media have said, but they haven't actually said anything.
Yeah. This feels like the Matt Patricia hiring in Detroit, honestly. Like I know like when Patricia got hired, like no Patriots fans were upset. Mm-hmm. It seems like literally $0 fans are upset.
Yeah. It's kind of, I see the similarities. I would say like Leftwich has been better this, Patricia left after giving up the most yards, getting lit up by Nick Foles in the Super Bowl. Whereas Leftwich, I think has had a better season this year than he had last year. So, and part of it too is like it's kind of just hard to I don't know how good of a leader Leftwich is, right? And that's a big chunk of being a head coach, and like we basically have no idea about any of that stuff. So X's and O's, he's nothing special, but neither was Mike Vrabel, right? I mean, Mike Vrabel got hired being the 30th best defensive coordinator, or being a defensive coordinator for 30th ranked team. So it's always tough with that stuff.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I hope he does well. I hope that team does well. I'd love to see Jacksonville kind of relevant with Lawrence.
Yeah, it should be fascinating. All right, yeah. So I guess that's it.
All right.
All right.
We did our plug, so I guess that's it. All right. I don't have any final thoughts beyond that, though.
Okay. Well, you said all right like 4 times, like you're about to say something, and then just didn't say anything.
I'm just embracing my inner outcast.
Okay. Got it. Thank you to everybody again. We appreciate it. All right. Thank you for watching or listening after the fact. And of course, until next time, see you later, alligator.
Peace.